Today I'm going to try to share some information that may be useful, may be helpful in laying out a custom paint job, a one-of-a-kind paint job. I want to share the technique that I've used both in modeling and when I used to paint motorcycles professionally, and now that I do it more or less as a hobby. I can share it on YouTube. I think you may enjoy seeing it, and if you really want to lay out one of these paint jobs, maybe it'll give you some ideas of one way to do it. So the first thing I have to think about whenever I think of a custom paint job is, what is it supposed to look like? I mean, if you have a Harley, you got to put flames on it and skulls. If you have a Yamaha, the ladders from any era always seem to be one of the choices. Some of the paint jobs of long ago, like the Vela sets and some of the Nortons, they have a very distinct what they're supposed to look like. And in the case when I did the FZR last year, I had an idea in my mind. I checked out 1,000 videos on YouTube, pictures, at every source of information to get ideas. Now, it was just a little bit different when I did the Kawasaki. I wanted something totally unique. I didn't want a copy of a factory paint job. I wanted it to look like the factory might have made this at one point in time, but that's the only one. I don't want to go to one of the bike shows or one of the gatherings, and there's my evil twin, my exact evil twin. So my point is, once you have a picture in your mind, what I always like to do is make a couple of concept sketches and just get some idea of how I want it to look. Now, the bike we're going to be working on, the 650R, I have an idea in my mind of what I want this black and gold paint job to look like. I want it to look similar to the bikes that I owned in the 70s and maybe even into the beginning of the 80s that were all black, had gold wheels. These are the requirements. It had gold wheels. Now, in my case, they were iridized cast wheels. They weren't painted. And the late George Venturini did the wheels for me. And the paint jobs were relatively simple, black and gold. They were not like a Harley paint job would be with lots of detail. They were relatively simple, but very classic looking. Now, there's also on this bike, there's a couple of custom things I want to make. I want to make a side cover for this that'll just give it a little bit of a different look. I want to paint the bottom fairing. There's parts up by the instruments that I want to paint. There's some things that I haven't decided what I want to do yet, but today, because it's not a riding day, I thought what I could do is share this little technique that I use. The technique is called paper dolls. Sounds funny, but it's a very effective way to lay out a paint job. Now, when I laid out the FZR, I did it all on with tape, laid it all out meticulously. Every piece of what now is a white stripe was laid out with the 3M blue tape. But in the case of the Ninja, don't really need to do that because it's going to be a lot simpler of a paint job. This was a very complex paint job. This probably went into the couple hour, 100-hour range. The one that we're going to do on a Ninja, a lot simpler, but it's got to be effective. It's got to be exactly what I envision in my mind. And in fact, just like the green Ninja, I want it to be a one-of-a-kind. Now, when you're doing a paint job like this, there's a lot of ways that are very simple to lay it out. One thing, you can just put the whole bike together. In this case, you can paint the whole bike white or whatever. Lay out the stripe. Then you can paint. This is the easiest way to do this type of a paint job. You can backmask the bike and paint the smallest of the two colors. In this case, it was the blue. Then, and I do this one day. I never paint twice in one day unless there's an emergency. So the white would be one day. The next day I would backmask this out, paint the blue. The next day, backmask the blue, and then paint the bigger color. So this minimizes the backmasking if you do it. But in this case, it's very easy because I had a clear vision in my mind what I wanted it to look like. I laid all this out in my mind. It looked just exactly the way I envisioned it. But in this case, I wanted this stripe to connect. I wanted this to connect. I didn't want to just have, and then they don't line up. Well, that's a lot harder to do if the bike is not in one piece. So that on this type of a paint job, the easiest thing to do is just put the whole bike together and lay the tape out just like I did on the FZR. This bike will be different because each part of the paint trim no two parts will be connected. So this allows me a lot more freedom in laying out. Now, what I'm going to do, I'm going to work from my concept sketches and make some paper patterns. I call those paper patterns paper dolls. Then I'm going to come out with the cut patterns, come out to the garage, and just scotch tape them in position, because it's going to allow me to look at how they look like that, how they look like that, up, down, black, white. Now, once I get the patterns made that I really want, that I think I'm close to having what I want, I'll take the patterns and just spray paint them with a can of craft paint gold, so I can see what that trim would look like in gold. Now, once I see what it looks like, then I can go back and say, yeah, I like it, I don't like it. The only thing I can't do, I can't look at how to, for the first thing I'll have to do is paint the wheels gold, and that'll change the whole look of the bike. See, once the wheels are gold, then if I were to paint big, bold stripes on this, not sure I'd like it. Or something like that. I want very subtle little thin trim that kind of all matches, all ties this all together. And I don't want it to look like anything else. I want it to be a unique, well, I try to make it that each one of the bikes is unique in some way. And that's, of course, in the eye of the beholder. How unique they are is in the eye of the beholder, but in my eye, they seem to be okay. And every one of them is basically done from what's in the eye of the beholder, what I like. I don't try to please some corporate, well, Karen is the corporation around here, and she likes them all. Well, if I don't feed the fish in the morning, I find out that I don't get a lot done, and then the fish they spit up at me when I walk by. Hey, you're being fed. And of course it's raining out here today, it's why we're not going to ride, but look at some of the beautiful trees. Oh man, it's just, this time of year, it's beautiful even on a rainy day. A good day to do this artwork thing. And even on a day we know we can't ride, just looking around at the neighborhood, the leaves, it's just a beautiful time of year. Oh, I just saw a squirrel run by. Or it's a rat, one or the other. What a beautiful time of year. And this is in the cool weather, this is the key to life. Oh, I don't know what Karen's cooking, but as soon as she's done on a kitchen table, I'll be able to use the kitchen table for my work. Well, maybe I'll just work downstairs. She's busy cooking here, cooking up a storm. So just to back up, I took some pictures at the angle that I wanted of the motorcycle. I wanted to have a direct side-on view, and I wanted it to be pretty much of the angle that you would see the motorcycle from. So the original pictures that I took, I picked the best one, and John Pothier took out the background. And I did a lot of little sketches. I had some ideas I wanted to try, but from sketch to sketch to sketch to sketch, it's the same thing. You're never really satisfied. I like to see it in real life, and that's what this process is going to let me do. Now, I also did something that about once every 30 years I do. I updated my little desk here that I use to edit the video, and of course this has been, I had this old big screen TV. I converted it into a monitor with the help of John Pothier and Art Conklin, and boy, does that make it easy when you're editing video. But here's my point. The reason for showing this is right on the side I have one of the sketches that I made, along with, of course, some of the artwork that Miles has made for me. But I had this, so I'm looking at it constantly. So what'll happen is I'll be over here and answering email or whatever, and then I think, how would that look? Be working over here, how would that look? And so it's, and then I have the FCR one over here. But I'm always thinking, the idea is, I used to, when I built model planes, I'd be driving down a road, see a trailer truck go by with a cool paint job and go, wow, how would that look on an airplane? Whatever. And always looking for some idea of what would make this a unique motorcycle. Now, it was just this morning, our new friend, good friend now, Dallas, out in California, and I hope his house isn't burning or smoking out. I wanted to share this with him. This is a picture of my father. First of all, there's his license from whatever, the 30s or the 20s, 1939. And this is what he did, just for laughs. He was part of the Ken Butler Thrill Show. And of course, I don't know, He loved aviation. Of course, he was a Navy flight instructor. But since we're just sharing information, and this is, of course, the cover of that I treasure. And, well, if you only knew what we went through to get that magazine. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Now, what I need to do this first part of this job is obviously you need some idea of what you want to do. You want to make polka dots, stars, flames, skulls, make the motorcycle look like a banana, whatever you want to do. Simple thing, you need a roll of Scotch tape, a pair of scissors, a pen, a ruler. Now, what I want to do first of all, and I bought 2 sheets. They were from the dollar store. So what I'll do is I'll save one. I'll put one in inventory. So this first one is now my starter part, or whatever I want to call it. So what I want to do is I know roughly what I want these design things to look like without even having a motorcycle around. I'm going to do this. I'm just going to make a tentative one, and I just can do this at random. I did yellow because it's the most like gold, and when I want to make these spray painted gold and tape them on, it's the easiest way. And on here I'm making them the other trick. Always make them oversized. You're making let's call it paper dolls, and let's pretend it's no different than a model airplane. In fact, it's exactly the same. So, and of which I've designed a lot. And when I did go to art school as a young man, I was taught the basics of art training, which I wasn't that good of a student, though. I wasn't like George Venturini, though. I'm just going to do one, and then we'll go out to the garage, and I'll show what I use these for. Again, if you understand this part of it, you can even make it better. You know, right now, if I thought I could buy gold paper, well, I couldn't. Let me just put this aside. If I show one, I think you'll get the idea of how the whole thing would work. Always make them a little bit oversized. This is basically the shape I want to use. Now, I want to just, looking back, and it was 1985. I'm trying to remember, 84 or 85. I saw a trailer truck go by. And a trailer truck had trailer trucks, you never know what. The cab had a really unique little design on it, and it stuck in my mind. And a year later, I wound up making a model plane that was a winner of the concourse for that year. So, now, the reason these are oversized is when I go out to the motorcycle, I'm going to put this on the motorcycle and say, ooh, that's too long, that's too short. Or I'll be able to do this, move it up, move it down, turn it around, turn it upside down. And when I'm happy with the shape I have, I'll come in and throw a coat of gold paint on it, and I can go outside and look at what that paint job would look like if I had done the paint job. Now the problem is, if you do a paint job, and I have done this, believe me, and then put the bike back together and you go, wow, too gaudy, not the right color gold, not this, not that. It's a lot easier to do this with templates, whether you call them paper dolls or templates. If you want to sound professional, you say templates. If you want to, well, it's in the eye of the beholder anyway. But anyway, this is something a lot of people don't realize you can do this, or they're not familiar with it, or that's why I'm trying to share this information. Okay, so from less than one piece of paper, I wound up making just random, and again, random shapes. None of them are not going to get trimmed, but it's going to give me a lot of choices. What I'm going to do is go out to the garage and start seeing how they look on the motorcycle. And again, if I had gold paper, yeah, that would be great, but this whole episode, this whole thing of making these patterns, less than $1 from that piece of paper. That'll save me a lot of work and a lot of disappointment if this doesn't look good in the very end. So no, out in the rainy garage, this is just a sample of what I can lay out now. Now I have to envision a little bit. I was going to paint the bottom piece, the bottom fairing. I want it to be, of course, flat black. I'm trying to eliminate as much of the flat black as possible. So I want to start just laying these out, and of course it's all in the eye of the beholder. And this can go on for days. This can go on infinitely. But it's a lot easier than taking the paint off and putting the paint on. So here's my first thought. if I can pick up this line here, and there's a crease in the fairing here, I've got to just adjust the pattern now. But that's why you make them oversized. And once I trim this down, if I can get the angle to pick up that line and pick up that line, that'll be a good starting point anyway. Now while I'm making these, and I realize I got the angle right now on this one, similar to what I want, I can just lay this out. But here's what I want to do. I want to make the tail of this go a little bit further out. Just a question now of connecting the dots and cutting out a new pattern. So I can constantly trim these. See, they're all oversized and I'm trimming them down. But until I get, because this is going to pick up an angle along the top of the fairing and an angle along the side. I want to pick up angles and emphasize that. Since there's going to be, in the very end, there's going to be a very small amount of trim. I don't want to have big giant panels, but I want it to be exactly matching these angles and edges of the fairing. So this is the first one, and I just, of course it's not going to be the last, well the final, but I wanted to pick up, I'm always trying to pick up angles and edges, something that would be, just add something to the look of a motorcycle. And so that evolved into, just our one choice. Now, the one thing for sure, you never want to do this and be married to it. You want to look at it overnight. Now, the first thing I noticed is, I think I'm going to just hang on to this, but make this line connect in here. So I'll make two new things, because this is a critical thing. It is a thing when you're laying out a paint job in paint and tape, and it gets to be labor intensive. Right now, no labor. But I think after seeing this in real life, connecting it to that point in space would just be a better choice. So all it requires is scissors, and we haven't even used up half of the paper yet. And what's really wrong with this, see, here's what's wrong from an artistic point of view. There's a line, an imaginary line goes through the seat, and then this line is going down too far. The space in this has to go further up. So this will be a relatively easy thing, but I'll have choices by the end of this day, and it may be more than one day. I don't care. At the end of the day, I'll have my patterns, I hope. Now, John Pothier is also making up some unique 650R stickers. What we did, we simulated the lettering that's cast into the seat, and he made up a decal for that. So we don't know how that's going to play out yet, but I'm going to start. I'll make the rest of these off camera. Kind of simple, redundant, it takes time, and it's worth it in the end. And of course, here's the thing you can always do with these. That's why we call them paper dolls. You can say, well, what would that look like there? What would that look like without that piece there? What if I just capture that line and make it, well, that's the whole thing. This makes doing it a lot easier than laying out yards and yards and dollars worth of tape. See, this is one of the things that, until you lay it out in real time, you never really see it. Well, you see that line that we're trying to somehow get that into the design. Well, when I follow the edge of the fairing like I did here, it doesn't really work the way I want it to. Again, all in the eye of the beholder anyway, but what I need to do is come up with, and John Pothier brought up a great point, when these are going backwards, it looks like slow motion, even though, they should be facing forward, but again, that's the beauty of doing it this way. You don't run into that, we have to pull off all the tape and do it, or sand off all the paint. So we got a lot and we just keep using up these little parts, and we have a whole nother sheet and a half of paper if we have to use it. And this is what happens by the end of the day, and we'll spend the whole rest of the day. I don't care. We'll spend 2 days, spend a week. Because once this is laid out that I'm happy with it, then we're ready to move on with the next part of the project. Now, I've really made a whole bunch of patterns here. Not sure which one I like, if any. What I'm going to do is just sit and think about this for a while, move on to doing the pattern for the seat. So I wanted that to be very subtle on the seat. Actually, I want the whole thing to be very subtle, but I don't want it to be overpoweringly gold, because the wheels are going to be gold. This is just meant to be an exercise in being subtle. Now, I'd like that line to tie in with that line. That's what I'm dealing with right now, is when I see the seat in place, it changes this, because I want to get that line to line up if I possibly can. It means this would have to go down just a little bit. Well, we're going to see how that plays out. Now with these two kind of similar, I guess, that's the best one I've got so far. And what I did, I took this pattern, made it a little thicker, made it a little thinner, and put 3 different sizes up there. This one looks like the right one. It marries up to the seat. It's subtle. It's not overpowering, and it looks like that's, when I combine that with the custom graphics that John is working on, the custom graphics I assume will go up in this area, and maybe or maybe not the word Kawasaki down at the bottom here, I'm not sure. But this is the thing of give and take, and I don't want this to be overpowering. This is supposed to be very subtle. So just by roughing these out and roughing this one out and trying to get the 3 that match. These are the three trim, I guess, shapes that I wanted to get today. And I want, actually, not that far away right now. But this all could change. It changes in a heartbeat. And the more I look at it, I'm going to have to, one of the next steps is I want to just look at this. I want to have Karen come out and look at it. Karen is usually pretty good at saying, ah, or whatever. Now, I've got to allow for the fact up here, somewhere up here, I think, we will put that graphic, that tricky graphic, and I don't know what we're going to do with the one on the tail section yet. But to be honest, I do like the way this kind of played out here. As a good starting point. Now, as a starting point, now I still have to make all permanent patterns. These are just roughed out. I want to make them with a ruler. I want to make them permanent. And then what I want to do at the very end, I want to spray paint them gold. It's raining out there now, so that's going to be difficult to do right now. But this will be an interesting. I want to try to just keep this very simple, and I think I've got the right balance here, because again, the wheels are going to be gold. I'm probably going to paint the forks black. I want it to be a flip of what it normally would be, gold and black instead of black and gold. And I still have to come up with something on the bottom of the fairing. It'll either be the Kawasaki decal, and I can mimic that. That's not a problem at all. But see, one of the things I'm limited to is when I make decals, I can't make them gold, and I definitely can't make a match, so I have to take that into account. So I'll have to paint gold. Well, John and I are pretty good at doing that, so we're going to work on it. The other thing is when I make this side piece here, I'm going to try to make a carbon fiber piece that covers half of that shock. That's kind of one of the custom things I wanted to make. I made a pattern for that already. I'm not sure if I'm going to be using it or not using it or whatever. But right now, so far, this is a good start. Now, the rest of the thing I'm going to do, I'm going to try to do this today, but I don't know how it's going to play out. I wanted to look at, I don't want to put anything. See, in other words, this is a part, I'd like it, this is a part I customized, cut that down, painted it, made it shiny black. I'll probably paint the blinkers shiny black too. I'd like that all to be shiny black. I need to do a little repair in the back of the seat here where the camera mount used to go. We don't use that rear camera mount anymore. That's another thing, but the biggest thing is going to be when the wheels are gold. That piece at the bottom is going to be shiny black. I have that little carbon fiber piece covering half the shock. And I've even thought about maybe making that shock spring black so it kind of fades in. And it's all subtle little things. And you know, this is not like a Hayabusa. When you customize a Harley, a Hayabusa, or something that there's a million custom bikes. This is really a unique bike. I think I've got these little trim things pretty much the way I want them. I'm not sure yet, but the good news is I can change them, and I've got a lot of time left to change it here, because we still have a couple rides left on that back tire. I've said that for the last month, and we're really not going to pull the bike apart and pull the wheels off and everything. See, actually, it's going to work to my favor, because the bike needs a back tire, and I don't want to pull it off, put a new tire on, ride twice, and have to take it off again. So I'll get one or two more rides on this, and I'll get stuck and get a flat and probably get arrested or something. But anyway, I'm going to try to look at a couple other choices of this side piece. Maybe see, this side piece, this could come back further that way. that might be one other subtle little choice before I pack it in for the day, and then to have Karen come out and poo-poo it. Now, sometimes it seems like you spend an endless amount of time doing this, and the reality is you do. But I think we got it pretty close. I'm going to make up permanent patterns now. What they will be, the permanent ones have a perfectly straight line. And I think the last step today is I'll be able to get them, if it stops raining. Yeah, I kind of like this. I'll be able to get them in a coat of gold paint on them, and then I can come out tomorrow and see what they look like in gold paint. So what I did, I just painted these a quick coat of gold paint, just to get, again, to get a look. We go in step by step by step. This is only the first day of doing this, and it could be that we're going to be doing this a lot. It could be we'll be doing this 15 times before we're final. But once we have those final patterns, then I'll take a lot of pictures so I make sure I get the alignment right, and then we'll work with John on the graphics. Because I want to see this whole thing together before I lay out any tape or pull a bike apart. It's always better to do this while the bike is in one piece too, not in a bunch of pieces. One final thing, and Karen mentioned it was a good idea. Why not just paint the paper ahead of time? Since we have the can. This is just craft paint, it's not good paint. But it'll allow us to see just a little closer than the yellow did how this is going to play out. And we have not mixed the gold paint yet. That's still on our adventure chart. Now, I didn't get a chance to mix or test gold paint yet. I have several choices, and this is just one of them. I got this pigment, and it's a pearl gold. Because remember, what I want to have, I want the focal point of the motorcycle to be the gold wheels. They'll be hand buffed for sure. Just like the FCR wheels, they'll be jewelry, I hope. And as they're spinning, they'll be sparkling or whatever. Again, it's all in the eye of the beholder anyway. But we're trying to capture that look of my 70s race bike that had gold wheels, very subtle gold trim, and basically was all black. And I think we're on the road to doing that. So I can get a little idea how this looks, even though these are not permanent patterns. We get some idea, even a little idea how this is going to look, at least without the graphics. And so we end the first day of making patterns, and this is not the last day, of course, and we still have a couple of riding days left, but unfortunately today isn't one of them. So I hope you enjoyed the video, and thanks for watching.